welcome to today's weekly web chat. I'm Darcy, and I'm joined by three fabulous people, and we're going to talk today about something near and dear to my heart, and that is supporting each other as teachers and colleagues. So let's get started with introductions. Erin, tell us a little bit about who you are, what's your story, where have you been, where are you now?
Okay, well, I'm Erin Jacobson. I am currently the coordinator of the North Dakota Teacher Support System. That is a kind of a pass-through grant that is in charge of providing training for mentors of first-year teachers in our state. And so schools can decide if they want to participate in that program with their first-year teachers. And then we also take on, we offer some training for instructional coaches that are new in the role of instructional coaching. And so those are two of the main things that we do in the North Dakota Teacher Support System. Prior to that, I was an instructional coach for 6 years at the elementary level. And then prior to that, a classroom teacher, and I taught second, third grade, and fifth grade.
Fantastic. And so you're leading that mentorship program, and we have two people who have experienced that mentorship program and the mentorship process. So tell us about yourself, Stephanie.
Sure. I'm Stephanie Shea. I'm in my 26th year as a public school teacher. I think that's pretty amazing. As I was doing the math here, like, wow, I'm going to go celebrate that. So I started out as a second grade teacher way back. And then I switched to a first grade teacher because there was an opening. I always kind of feel like I want to get under things. I always want to kind of problem solve and like, oh, I know this now. What if I did first grade? So I taught first grade for the rest of that time in the classroom. And I spent 14 years in the classroom. And then our family moved to where I'm teaching right now in West Fargo. And that caused a little change in the trajectory of my career. And I stepped out of the classroom and took a title position and was trained in reading recovery. And along with that, since that's just a 50% job, they were just starting supporting teacher roles. And so I became a strategist in Fargo Public Schools, a student support or a student performance strategist. And part of the role was to take on that mentorship of brand new teachers, which was delightful. It was just energizing and wonderful. So I enjoyed that kind of split. And I've spent 11 years doing that kind of role. And I just stepped away this last fall to do back to the classroom, because really that's really the foundation of everything I've done so far. It's kind of the summation of this equation of my teaching career so far. So I'm back in the classroom and I'm doing third grade. So I've kept it kind of primary. But as a coach, I've been in every classroom. So fifth graders used to scare me because they're mostly taller than me. But well, I'm not much taller than 5 feet. So yeah, they scared me. But after sharing the classroom and kind of being alongside of their teachers, those new teachers, I've been in fifth grade and I conquered my fear, and kids are kids. And
fantastic. And Jessica, where are you joining us from?
I'm Jessica Schmidt and I teach third grade in Ashley, North Dakota, and I have been teaching for 18 years. I taught in Montana for 4 years. I taught on a reservation, a third and fourth grade combination class, and then in Ritchie, Montana, a fourth and fifth combination class, and now I've been in Ashley since. And this is my first year doing the mentoring program, and I'm mentoring the new sixth grade teacher, and I really have enjoyed it.
That's great. I want to point out, if no one caught that, I randomly invited 3 third grade teachers to join this conversation. This was not intentional. This was not to exclude other grade levels, but apparently in this dynamic, there's something about teaching third grade that maybe drives you out of the classroom to other people. Maybe that's more of a commentary on the nature of third graders. I don't know. But it amused me when we realized that you were all third grade teachers. So today, my goal is to just talk about how do we support each other. And so from your experiences in the classroom, but also doing this training, let's start with how can we best support new teachers? Let's use that as our first topic, since that is a lot of what the three of you have focused on. When a new teacher enters the building, how do we help make that first year or two? Because we know, 50% of teachers leave the profession within the first 3 to 5 years. Mm-hmm. How do we as colleagues help ease that path in that really difficult first few years so that we can keep young, energetic teachers in the field?
I could start us out, and I know that Jessica and Stephanie will have seen this little graphic, but I think it might be worth sharing again. So can you see it?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right. So this is something that was created by the New Teacher Center, and they're a national organization that works to provide training for mentors of beginning teachers. And they work to see different phases that a first-year teacher might go through, and these are the phases. So beginning in anticipation, they're really excited. They move into survival. Around December right now, we might be in disillusionment. It's just heavy and not sure how to keep it going. But then that beautiful time of winter break comes, and we move into rejuvenation, then reflection, and once again, anticipation for the next year. Just a really simple way of talking about what the phases are. When we go over that in our mentoring program, almost always the mentors in the room say, well, I'm not a beginning teacher and I go through those phases often and regularly. And I think just calling them what they are, that these are phases, that these are seasons of our teaching career, and they happen for different reasons, and it's okay, and you're not going to be stuck there. And the mentor comes along to provide that support, that yes, this is happening and you are feeling this way, but here's maybe some things we could do to move us forward, because there's going to be a next, and there's going to be a brighter day here. And that's what I have witnessed and heard many, many stories about, is that the mentor meets the first year teacher in all of those phases and helps them move forward.
So I like that idea. It feels pretty simple, but it's really validating that what they're feeling is totally normal.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Especially when they hit disillusionment and they just want to walk home and not come back. And you're right, Erin. I mean, I think that's it. As you were talking, I think you made great points, and I'm so glad you shared that. As a coach and a support in a lot of different settings, or just even in different audiences, because I've been in school-wide buildings where I've been called to kind of help with the total culture, I have brought that graphic with, because it helps everybody. I think everybody goes through that. And I think, because I wrote, we all go through it, right? And I think what teachers need is other teachers too. I think teachers need other teachers, because we're walking this walk. It's unique. I think every job has its ups and downs, but I think teaching is unique. It's the toughest job you'll ever love. And I think to have teachers say, I'm living proof, we're going to get through it. We'll get through it together. I'm alongside you, what you need help with. And if we know they're in the disillusionment phase, then we might act a different way. We might just say, I'm going to do this for you. I'll bring this to you. I'll lift this work for you. And then I wrote down a couple of things I loved about what you said, Erin. There are seasons, right? And there's rejuvenation. And I think another tool that I really liked as a mentor is the way that we structure our conversations. We always start with celebration. Mm-hmm. So rejuvenation it can come every week when we meet, even in some tough times, when we take a moment and just step away and celebrate. And sometimes a mentor's eyes can find more to celebrate than that disillusioned teacher, if that makes sense. So we can celebrate this really challenging work because it is awfully rewarding.
I agree that starting the mentor meeting every week, to have it start with what is something you're feeling good about, is a great way for them to just have a few minutes to reflect on what, because sometimes it's easy to get into the negative, what's going wrong. Whereas if you start with that positive, there are the negatives that you have to talk about, but I think it makes it easier to talk about the things that might be going wrong when you start with the positives.
And is that what you generally recommend, Erin, that the people who are mentors, who are in a formal mentorship capacity, meet weekly with the mentee?
Yes, it is. And I'm trying to, so what we ask our mentors of beginning teachers to do is to meet with their beginning teacher 15 times each semester. And so for a total of 30 one-on-one conferences. And I'll see if I can share this. What we're trying to do when we are meeting in those one-on-one conferences is build what we would call a habit of mind. And it's up in this cycle here where the mentor is walking the first year teacher through, let's reflect, now let's focus, then let's plan, now let's implement. So that we don't get stuck in problem admiration. And we, sometimes beginning teachers, they have so many things they want to work on, but without a focus, you're not going to make any gains. Without a plan, you're not going to get anywhere. And then that implement, what are we actually going to do? And so we've heard some feedback, that this is helpful to keep that cycle moving. It is a form. And sometimes when it's a form and you feel like you have to fill things out, that can get a little bit maybe, impersonal. But the idea here is that we move through reflect, focus, and plan. And so I really try to also talk with mentor teachers about that. That's the habit of mind we're trying to create, so that we don't, I think as educators, it can be hard to see the light sometimes. And if you just break off a little bit of a chunk of something that you might be able to make some progress on, then you start to feel that success, and you start to know that there are some things that you have control over, and you can get going for yourself. So we ask for that to happen 30 hours each year.
I like, for me, what I heard that I really liked of that, Erin, is it's like making one thing tangible, because being overwhelmed can just be this cloud. And so you need to latch on to one thing tangible. And it's interesting to me, like everything you're saying, because so much of this is what we as teachers do with our students. Mm-hmm. Like when a student is feeling overwhelmed writing an essay at the high school level, for me, I'm always like, well, don't worry about writing the whole thing right now. Like, write your main idea. Like, just all I need you to do right now is write one sentence. Like, you can write one sentence. And they're like, well, yeah, I can do that. And I'm like, just do that then. Don't worry about like the next thing. Do that one tangible thing. And then when they're done with that, I give them the next tangible thing. Yeah. And yet, I will be very honest, I rarely do that for myself, or I don't think I do it very well for myself. So having that outside validator of saying, let's pick one thing. Have you found that, like Stephanie, in your work with your mentees, like what is your approach to that kind of dealing with the, like helping get them to rejuvenation?
Right. I mean, I think that's a huge part of it, because you are that person that's going to step alongside and help focus and make it a tangible next step. What can we do? And then, if you're lucky enough to be in the building, and I was often, I can check in tomorrow and I can say, okay, your step is this. what can I do to help you with that? And I can be looking for ways that I can kind of lift that next step depending on how big it might be. But usually it's pretty small and tangible, and teachers want that. It's like, oh, thank you. As I was listening, I love that, Erin, habits of mind. And I think I know it can be a form, but I think after a while, especially, I'm not great at it. So I always appreciated having it even 11 years later because it's a structure. But I could see evidence with some of my new teachers. I think as a support in coaching, you're differentiated professional development. So you might get an SOS call, help, I've got an email I need to respond, and maybe I've got a parent who's upset about something. That habit of mind, what can I celebrate first about the child? Because maybe there is an issue, but I'm going to start with what's going well, right? So that kind of feeds over into ways to communicate themselves, right? You're kind of growing this habit of mind. Like, I'm going to first tell you about the things I can see that are working. Like you're saying, Darcy, with the student who's stuck with writing, and that happens a lot every day in a classroom, right? What I heard you say this, write that. I'll be back to check on you. It's that, okay, I can get going. So.
As a new mentor, Jessica, how has that, like, whether it's the form or just the process, how has that felt for you? Because for me, the fear, as someone, I've not been a mentor, I've had good mentors, but since I'm a teacher and that person is also another teacher and we're both adults, like, what do I know? Like, how can I be like the person? There are days where I'm like amazed that I put pants on. Like, how can I be the person?
Or your shoes match.
Yeah, who's like helping this other person? Yeah. How does that feel for you with a peer?
Sometimes it can feel a little bit overwhelming. I think that's why I like the form so much, because it gets us started in the right direction. We start with, what's going well, and we only focus on one thing a week, whether it's engagement or classroom management or help with a lesson. We only do one focus a week. And I think the form is truly what has helped both of us stay on topic and stay where we can try to figure one thing out.
In looking at the form, one thing that stood out to me is by having something concrete, it takes away your brain processing power. You're not having to think about the how in terms of like, how am I going to have this conversation? You get to focus on just having the conversation because the how is kind of laid out for you.
Yeah.
And Erin will know, I forgot what it's called, but that half a sheet that has, how to help when you're speaking with your mentee. I absolutely love that. I love what would it look like, or those phrases to help instead of, oh, this is what I do in my classroom, because I think those phrases help so much when you're not making them, but helping them reflect on what it could look like in their classroom, because it'll never look exactly the same as it does in your classroom, and it shouldn't, because they're their own person. But those phrases, Erin, I forgot what those are called because I'm home right now, but
yeah, it's called the language of support.
I have them on my desk, and I'm old, but I still love them.
I use them with my kids too.
I know.
Sometimes my husband.
I do too.
What I love about it too, if I may, just to piggyback off Jessica, is that, I think at the end of the day, and it's all about ownership. Like, kind of like, I'm over myself enough. Like, I'm not ever trying to recreate my classroom from the glory days, right? And so I'm not going to tell you what I would do. And these kind of help you get that teacher to be thinking about their own practice and the ownership of their practice.
I really like that.
They're positively phrased. So it is the mindset we all desire to have. But we're all in different, I feel like I'm in a different phase all the time. I'm always growing to where these will hopefully someday just roll off my tongue. But there are times where they're not. And I think it's that getting that teacher to be mindful about their language, getting that teacher and all of us to just be working toward, being more supportive.
Mm-hmm.
All of those things I'm now reflecting. The first school that I taught at was in Ellsworth, Wisconsin, and I've been very fortunate to teach at amazing schools where I have just had a great time and I've had lovely colleagues. But there are a couple things that really stood out to me about the culture of Ellsworth School District in Wisconsin. And there are a couple main things that I noticed. One, there was the high school chemistry teacher, Kurt Dummermuth. He was like like the Wisconsin Science Teacher of the Year. He was one of those guys who was just so respected. He had to walk past my classroom to get to his classroom. And it wasn't much, but every single morning and most afternoons, he would just pop his head in my room and go, "Hey, Bakigard, what's on for today?" And I don't know if it was strategic or not, but I cannot tell you as a young teacher what it meant to me to have that experienced and very highly respected teacher in the school just take the time. And it didn't take very much time for him. Right. He literally, I know I'm very chatty, but with him, it was like I would give him a quick reply. And then frequently, on a Friday, he would poke his head in because I was always there before him and I was always there after him because I was a first-year teacher.
Yeah.
But he would poke his head in and he would just go, "I want you to leave in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
He would make a little statement like that. And then there was another teacher, Judy Helmer, who noticed that I wasn't coming to lunch, that I stayed in my room and I worked through lunch. And she came to me one day and she said, "You need to come to lunch." And I kind of looked at her and she was like, "You need a break from your classroom. You need a brain break. You need to come join us." So she was like, "I'm going to buy you lunch today." She came one morning and she was like, "So you come and we're going to have lunch." And she said, "You don't have to come every day. Some days you might need to work, but I need you to come to lunch today."
Yep.
And honestly, I do not think I would have gone to lunch without that invitation. It was a relatively small school. All the teachers knew each other, like they were very good friends. I very much felt like the young outsider. I was nervous and I was like, I need this 20 minutes just to work. But the gift that Judy Helmer gave me was unbelievable in terms of I've made connections with my colleagues in a way that I wouldn't have if I just had put my head down and kept working. So for me, sadly, I do not think that I have lived those values in the same way that I hold them up. And it's kind of a nice reminder to me that I'm like, I need to revert. I need to go back to some of these things. Are there things like that for you, either that other teachers have done for you or that you have found very helpful for other teachers? These seemingly little things. It didn't cost Kurt anything to stop in my classroom. It cost Judy $3.50 because she bought me lunch. It really didn't cost anything for her to extend that very gracious invitation. What are those things for you?
I think a lot of it, the mentor role, it can be tricky because if you're in the building or not, right? So there are mentors all around us. So it might be a conversation like, who have you connected with? Have you found a venting buddy, but have you connected too? Because we need to kind of have those things. And I like to talk about it. I think to have longevity in the job, and I know we mentioned at the beginning that teachers don't often even make it to their third or fifth year. Mm-hmm. You can feel very isolated, and teaching is a job where you can just close your door and hunker in. And I think that it's wonderful you can work, but you also need that brain break. You need to realize you are an adult in the adult world and maybe have some adult conversations and disconnect for a little bit, right? Maybe it's There was a teacher I had, it was walk and talk. We would go outside of the building. We would just walk outside. Even in a wintry day, we would take a lap around the building, you know, just to get the sun and the air and, you know, whatever the weather had. I had another teacher too, I'll tell very briefly. It was that cute teacher bag. She was admiring another teacher bag. And I said, you know, do you really need the bag? Because that bag is just going to go home with you. Let's take a look at what you're putting in the bag. You know, it's cute, but you might want some new shoes too, right? So I don't want you to think you got to fill that bag. And it turned out she had been hoarding like stacks of papers that she didn't want to talk about, right? She didn't want to look at it. I'm like, let's get it out. Let's look at it. We ended up going through it and throwing most of it away.
Oh, wow.
What can we glean from this? What do we need to learn? And let's, yeah, I think we saved her some money. It was a cute bag, but we didn't need it, right?
That's great. Yeah. We talk a lot about this too at when we get together and meet just as mentors for a half day in October. A lot of people will say their first year teachers spending way too much time at the school. It's exhausting. They remember it well. In some circumstances, the mentor still has that practice and is staying just as long and is now seeing it occur in this beginning teacher. And so we have conversations about how can we encourage them to do it differently and what can be done to create that balance so that you're not just a great teacher, you're also a great human being, because we know that the better you are, the better teacher you are. We have a beginning teacher network grant this year that is bringing in an author called Tina H. Bugren, and maybe you're familiar with this book. It's called Take Time for You, Self-Care Actions and Plans for Educators. And she partnered it with a field guide that's called Embarking on Your First Years for the Beginning Teacher. And so these two books together with that Tina H. Bugren, I was not familiar with them until this year, but it's just been fun to kind of dig in and see what's there, because I think as society we turn to let's get balanced and let's help each other get through some tough times. We're seeing that with our teachers too. How can we, as educators who have students coming into our classrooms that really, really need us, how can we make sure that our own cup is filled up as well?
Yeah. I got to the point where my kind of office that I had was actually more of a lounge, and I had a couch in there. I had dim lights. I had essential oils. I had cards for people to reflect on. And I had more teachers just coming and taking 10 minutes, needing that kind of self-care throughout the day, and say, this is just a calm spot. No questions asked if you're in here, because I do think we need to be able to bounce back.
Yeah.
And it might be moment by moment some days. And I think it all comes from a trusting relationship, right? And like you're saying, Erin, a lot of reflection there, like I might not be modeling how to do this. I might be burning the candle at both ends too and thinking I can, but maybe I'm not that bright spark that this person needs, or, and I can totally tell you I've walked that path, and, I'm not perfect, but I definitely got myself to do a little bit more for myself, because I'm going to be that model. And yeah, for me, it might be working out at the gym or going for a run, but for you, it might be driving your car and listening to really ragey music for a while, whatever you can get. But feel free to lean on me and don't take that bag home tonight, right? I might stop in the morning and ask you, what did you do last night? Where did you go for yourself? Who did you connect with? Don't tell me about school, don't tell me about that curriculum word. I want to know what you did for you.
That's great, of knowing when we're in the space. One thing that I heard was kind of knowing when you're in the space to be a mentor and like what are the traits that you're modeling. But the other thing that I heard, and we can always circle back to these, but I would like, since you threw out the suggestion, Stephanie, of the space, like with the quieter lights and the couch, and it kind of, in my head, I immediately kind of envision kind of a decompression space. And you also meant the, like, just taking a walk, like having a walk buddy. For the three of you, do you have suggestions kind of from a building level? Like, how can we help build support, not just for, and like now I kind of want to also open it up, not just how do we support new young teachers, but I would imagine, Stephanie, in that space, it wasn't just the new teachers.
Nope. The ones who knew about it came. I mean, we had paras, we had, you know, I don't know if it was intentional. I think, you know, it wasn't designed to be against any other space. So I think you know, some people do and don't like their lounges, for example. And I wasn't doing it intentionally to say, don't go to the lounge. I just opened it up. Sometimes a new teacher will cry, right? They need a safe place to come and cry.
Right, you can't do that in the, oh, you can do that in the lounge.
But you want a safe face, you know.
Exactly.
You need a trusting partner that's just going to listen and not maybe do anything about it, not try to fix it. And as teachers, we want to try to fix things.
We do.
You know, I would ask teachers at the beginning of the year, my mentors, my mentees that I had, I'd ask them things like, what do you do to read? How do you relax? How do you disconnect? I would ask them a really great question that I found was a great question. I didn't know it at the time, but like, what were some of their favorite phrases? Like, be the change you wish to see in the world. And I would start putting those on little cards. Or one teacher asked me if I could just send little happy memes to her, you know, every once in a while. And sure, give me your number. I'll text you every once in a while when I think about it. It wasn't a daily thing, but just some of that positivity, because I think when it boils down, our beliefs are some of the reasons we went into this profession. We desire to be role models. We desire to be for kids, you know, those kind of people. And sometimes we are not at our best. So just being able to realize it and do something about it, right? So yeah, the space really became something that was really kind of cool for a lot of people. So, and I would often leave. You want me here or do you want me to leave? Some of them would just say, you need to leave. I'm like, I'm totally okay with that. I'm out. Let me know what you need. And I can go walk the building. So yeah. That's
just a very nice concrete thing, because you're right. A lot of places have the lounge and that's about it. And so if you can't, and there are certainly, like at West Fargo High School, the teachers don't all even have their own classroom.
Right.
They have shared classrooms. So it's not like the kids go to gym or you have a prep period and you can just close your door and turn off the lights. There are a lot of schools where the teacher, you're in a shared office with a whole bunch of people and you share a classroom and you have to travel. So that's a...
Well, yep, like paras. I didn't mean to cut you off, but like paras who maybe don't have space, or that work with some of our more challenging students.
Right, they don't have their own space.
Who are always sharing, and there's always children in the room, so they just need to be able to step away. And sometimes the lounge, it could be too far to go, right? It just sort of depends. So it's just another place, right?
I like that system. Like that's, I like that very concrete, tangible. Erin or Jessica, do you have other things? Like I referred to the culture of the building. Are there other things like that for new, old, all teachers that you've seen or just experienced as being helpful to maintaining a positive culture within a school and supporting teachers?
Last year in Ashley, we did start a thing where it was like staff shout outs, and it was just a sticky note and you could just write just something quick and easy and simple about, you know, great job with reader buddies, or I love your bulletin board, or, you know, just simple little shout outs to other teachers, and that was sort of a new thing that we did last year. Unfortunately, sometimes, you know, you get so busy and then you forget to do it the following year, but last year it was a really cool thing that we had done. I don't know why we're not doing it this year, but life just gets busy.
Yeah. That's a great New Year's resolution, like a new, like, let's fire up for the year. A friend of mine, Erica, who teaches out in Beulah, she has started making gratitude certificates for her colleagues. And she literally makes a certificate of gratitude and like for what she's grateful for. And some of them are funny. She said she gave the office woman who does all the announcements, she said she has the best voice. So she gave her like the Silver Mike Award, or like, I can't remember what she named it, but it was something about, you know, like her smooth voice. So some of them are kind of little pick-me-ups. I'm kind of like, I really love this bulletin board. That's very creative. And some of them are a little bit more personal. And she said that she's gotten a good response from people of just kind of planting these little seeds of gratitude.
And I think that is so important. I think that is a message not only to get across to the first year teachers, but to other teachers too, is just to take a minute to say something positive and something you're thankful for, or something you notice, to other teachers. Because sometimes we're really good about doing that with our students, you know, building them up, and we don't take the time to build each other up.
Well, one of the things that I would,
no, go ahead.
Okay. That I could add in here, a few years back, working in a school, and the culture was becoming more negative, and sometimes it's been my experience that negative voices can be louder in some places than the positive ones. The positive voices get kind of drowned out sometimes. And so that shift was occurring, and we wanted to attempt to change things for the staff, because we knew that not everybody was feeling that way, but there was this shift occurring. And so we did kind of just a simple activity that really stuck throughout the year, though, where we took just balloons, and maybe you've done this before or heard of it, and we put a bunch of just balloons that were blown up by us in a black garbage bag. And we had the staff get in a circle and keep that garbage bag full of balloons up in the air. And it was very easy to do. And then we took the garbage bag and we put it in one water balloon. And you would not believe, with just the one water balloon in that huge bag of balloons, that you could not keep that huge bag of balloons up in the air, no matter what you tried. We had a lot of athletic people on the staff, but we couldn't keep it up. And so we talked about that it does, that one person can change the direction of things. And so that's why it's so important for us all to do our best to take care of ourselves, to be positive, to know if we're not, to, like Stephanie, to go where you had that environment where maybe you could change things and you could see it a little bit differently. But that type of thing, how can we get this moving in the right direction again?
I love that activity. I'm writing it down. I want to do this sometime.
We were shocked how the principal and I did it together, and we were just shocked that you could not keep that bag up. It was hitting people in the faces. And we talked the remainder of the year, if something was happening, people would say things like, "I'm sorry, I'm being a water balloon," or, "Oh, don't be a water balloon."
Yeah.
So.
That's nice that it gives you that common language and experience that, and I think it's important to, Stephanie, you mentioned having a venting buddy and making sure you have someone that you can vent to. I do think that venting is very important. Sometimes you need to get those things off of your chest.
Yeah.
And to me, the difference is, are you venting, or to be a little bit more blunt, are you bitching for the sake of bitching?
Yep.
Or are you venting because you've identified a problem and you're going to start, like, that is the first action step in doing something about it. And so I think it's also easy to shut down all venting and say, oh, water balloon, water balloon. But I think I love the water balloon analogy. Like, I would do that too with students. What a great activity to do with students about, like, are you the negative, like, are you bringing us all down? And it goes back to that old saying, right? We say this to kids all the time. If you can't say anything nice,
Yeah.
Don't say anything at all.
Right?
right? And so if for that kind of thing, so if there's a young person and they are, they're making amazing bulletin boards, and at least for me, I didn't decorate my room. I had nothing. I had cinder block walls. And so it would be very easy for me to like roll my eyes and like, oh, like, what are they? Because I'm just jealous. I'm just jealous that they have a cute room, and I need to separate, like, kind of like that teacher, the bag that Stephanie was mentioning. I don't need to do that. That's great that that person can do that, and good for them. But I should not roll my eyes and make a negative comment because that person has a desire and a passion to do something that is not hurting anyone. And I maybe need to check my own feelings and emotions and make sure that my own feelings, like, if I know what I'm doing, this goes back to what many of you said about giving each other a little bit of positive affirmation. I have other things that I do well. I'm horrible at making bulletin boards. Literally, I put up decorations at the beginning of the year, sometimes with intentions of like, oh, I could rotate that. Never happens. It's the same stuff up the whole year. So I know I'm not good at that, but that does not mean that I'm a bad teacher. That's one area that I'm not good at. And so I don't need to say anything to that teacher. I don't need to roll my eyes. I don't need to say anything to that person who does want to do that for their classroom, because it has nothing to do with me.
You make a good point, and it often perhaps could or couldn't have much to do with student learning. So I think grounding ourselves in student learning, because it's a progression. If you choose to focus on your bulletin boards, then your room will get better and better all the time, right? And we can learn from each other. And people are so happy to share too. So I just, I think, collaborating and getting to know people, that's everything. Not feeling so isolated. Oh, if I'm going to put that bulletin board up, I'm going to have to stay here for 2 hours, is it worth it?
Right.
But I think you bring up a really good point with the venting. Personally, even for me going home at the end of the day, I go home to an elementary principal, and that we can spend, we'll sometimes for a while, we timed each other. Like, you can talk about your day for 15 minutes and then I'll talk about mine, and then we're done. And some years we've just said, we're not even talking about school because we don't want it to bleed in unless it's our favorite parts of the day, right?
I love that strategy.
So that's why I've always been a stickler, I guess, on being really transparent with that. Like, I know you want to my mentees, right? Find somebody you can just vent to, but I'm going to time you. And if it's me, I'm happy to listen, but I'm going to time you and then we're going to move on, right? Because like you said, is it venting to problem solve, or is it just venting to hear yourself? Yeah.
Great.
One of our mentors, she talked about that experience that there was a lot of venting going on, and she made a rule, and I'm not going to get the saying completely right, but she said, you can vent and then it's time to reinvent. And I really like that.
Love it, Erin. Oh, I'm writing this one down too.
And I understand my husband's a teacher as well, so we have to put parameters on it.
Yeah. And then your kids go to school too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm the only person whose spouse is not a teacher, and I can tell you one thing: he does not care.
Doesn't get it.
And so there's, to some extent, there's a blessing in both perspectives of having someone to sympathize and empathize with, but And so I do need a venting thing, but I'm lucky I feel that I have that break, because if I start talking at school about school, he will interrupt me and just say, I don't care. Like, this is not important. And it's a little bit of a slap, but it's a good slap in that you're right. I am hanging on to something that is not serving me, is not helping me accomplish anything. So I need to pop that water balloon and drain it.
Good.
And then like focus on these other balloons that I can keep up in the air, but I have to let this go because it is just, and so I appreciate that he will do that for me from time to time. I'm always irritated in the moment and I'm like, well, what a jerk. But then, 30 seconds later, I'm like, no, he's right. I'm regurgitating something and holding on to something that isn't good. Like I need to be done.
Yeah.
My
Pop
husband,
that water balloon.
yeah. My husband is actually the superintendent. So we have had to like really, really, and I sometimes do need somebody to vent to, but it's not him. We've really
Right.
tried to draw the line in the sand. We don't talk about it, but at the same time, he tries to tell me it might be a female thing, but I have found one of my dear friends in town, and she's not at the school, and she is my venting person, and she just knows that sometimes I just need to come and say stuff for about 10, 15 minutes, and then thankfully it's done.
Mm-hmm.
But that has added a little bit of interesting dynamics to our relationship too, with him being the superintendent and I'm the third grade teacher. And then sometimes that adds a dynamic to for me with the staff, because the other teachers, I have chosen over the past couple of years to eat lunch more in my classroom, just because teachers are teachers, people are people, and sometimes they want to vent about stuff. And for me personally, it's easier for me not to hear it and pretend they're not venting than for me to hear it and just internalize it. So that's been one of the things I've done just the last couple of years for me personally.
And
I take care of myself thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we need to know that about ourselves. I have gotten the gauge. I wasn't always great. Like I was great at that one school about eating at the staff lounge. But if the energy in the staff lounge is a lot of venting, or if it's a lot of people complaining about students, I agree with you, Jessica. I choose not to put myself into that environment because I want to be surrounded by light balloons, not like sloshing around down in the, so I hear you on that. And certainly you're in at a small school with only 16 staff members total. That's a very challenging situation for you. Everyone knows you're the superintendent's wife. You all work in the same building. So you do have to make space for that and find that separation of what is comfortable and safe and what is going to keep productive work relationships going forward.
Yes.
Yeah.
And sometimes I just have to remind myself too, like we all said, there's usually only one water balloon, and focus on all of the ones that are aired up instead of the one water balloon, and just focus on that.
Yeah.
You've given us our vocabulary for this now, Erin. This is fantastic.
If people come into the end of the chat, they'll say, water balloons.
What's going on with water balloons?
What is happening? What are these women talking about? So we're nearing the end of our hour. I don't know if any of you want to just share any a key story or a key strategy that for you has been very helpful or important in your mentorship process. I think we've tapped on a lot of things of what are some great strategies for those young teachers. I think we've talked on some strategies of just how do you just be a good colleague? Like how do you just be a colleague to people? Just anything that has been on your mind that we haven't gotten to and you would like to share.
think the only thing that I would say is really, really important and all throughout our careers, but especially if we can start it early in the career, is just making sure that teachers are observing each other and seeing the good things that they're doing. And that's just a practice that's normalized, that's not scary or threatening or evaluative. It's just part of the culture. It's been my experience that when that piece is in place and people feel free to go into each other's rooms and see what each other are up to, without it being formal, it just moves mountains, not only for beginning teachers, but for any year that you're a teacher.
That's
Sorry.
No.
I think, Erin, like I keep going back to teachers need teachers. So in terms of support, we need each other. And to piggyback off of that, like stepping into another room, just stepping in, like it used to be my favorite thing just to go snoop around, right? And now at my school that I'm at right now, next Friday, just for fun, we're doing kind of a happy half hour, and we're just doing an open house for Christmas, if you will. So we're just walking in, and there's no precipitation. There's no like you have to say this or talk this. You can only leave positive comments when you're in a space, and then you go off, and it's just a nice way, but this is how we learn. And I agree, we need each other. And it makes me think of when I decided I wanted to be a teacher, I was so energized. And I was walking the hallways of college and I was thinking, there is teaching going on everywhere around me. People are learning right now in this moment. And it's like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And there's a million things that people are learning right now because of teachers and because of learning. And there's magic happening in any classroom, no matter how they look or, or whatever, there's something to celebrate in every moment. So I think teachers need each other.
That's great. One of the things that stands out for both what Erin, you said of having the open doors and being able to see each other, and Stephanie, your tour, that we need each other as teachers, that this is a collaborative, supportive endeavor. We are all working toward the same end goal. This is not a competition of who is doing what. And I think sometimes, unfortunately, it can feel like a competition, and it's not. So anything that we can do to keep those doors open, literally and figuratively, of it being a safe place for teachers to ask each other for support, to help each other, and to make it that collaborative environment. I love both of those examples of open doors and a little snooping tour of seeing what other people are doing.
Well, and I can tell you, like, I've spent a good chunk of time being a coach. Now I'm back in the classroom, and I've felt the disillusionment too, like, oh my gosh, I need help. Who do I ask for help? But, I just stepped down the hallway and I say, oh, you know this. Can you share with me?
And what a powerful phrase. You know this. I've heard you. I've seen you do this really well. What a reaffirming and powerful thing to say to a colleague.
Yeah, and we're all knowledgeable in different ways. So we all have gifts to share. And that can help us reinvent ourselves and rejuvenate. So.
All right. I would love, honestly, I could talk to the three of you for like another hour, and it would just be like my own happy little corner of joy. So thank you so much for taking time to share these examples, to share these stories, and really to share these strategies of what are some concrete, simple things that we can be doing. Those of us who are mentors, like Stephanie and Jessica and Erin, but those of us like me who can just be a better colleague and be better at supporting the people with whom I am working. So thank you so much for taking the time to share this stuff. I think that this is just fundamental to improving the environment and keeping teachers teaching.
Thank you, Darcy.
Yes,
Thank you, Darcy.
All right. we'll see you guys later. Hopefully I get to see you all in person.
Bye, Erin. Bye, Jessica. Great to visit.
Bye.
Bye.